Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, before we get into the topic today, which is Pitt beating Wofford yesterday, 45-7, please subscribe to the channel down below. Just hit the subscribe button, like the video, dislike the video, and please comment and also share with your friends. Football season is back. It was good to be on the North Shore yesterday, but football is back. If you want to see everything we have coming up, interviews, player interviews, special guests we're going to have on, especially from good places, maybe even Alliance 412, Oakland Originals. We'll see how that goes. Make sure you subscribe down below, hit the notifications so that way you know when we go live or when we have a recording that goes to you. But guys, obviously the topic of the day, I waited. I was going to do a live video yesterday or even doing a recording yesterday, but really wanted to go back and watch the game from its entirety. I think you can watch a lot of stuff that happens on the field when you're there in person. Obviously, I was on the away side, only a couple rows up. It was good to see the amount of clashing that was going on down there, guys running around. It was good to see Pitt football back in full spring, especially as the fall season has come upon us. But also, too, Pitt gets a win, 45-7. And I think if many Pitt fans can understand this, we've had numerous years where we've gone, neck and neck with Youngstown State. We were neck and neck with Villanova for a while until we pulled away. The majority of what we see right now is that those days are clearly gone under the Pat Narduzzi era. Obviously in 2021, you had the season where, Kenny Pickett comes out and just lights up the world, scoring 70 points. Last year, we had West Virginia game one in the backyard brawl. Pitt took care of business with no warm-up game. That was good to see. But then you saw a game here where Pitt took care of business. Now, I went back and watched the game on TV. Obviously, what's great about obviously watching on TV and watching the replay, you can stop it, you can rewind, you go back, you see the pros and the cons. And really, this game in general, you saw a good bit, but certainly not enough to we're going to know what kind of team this is moving forward yet. Because one, guys, it is just Wofford. But in a way, though, I'm happy just for me as I sit here today. Pitt took care of business and making sure that it was never in question. When we're going to go over each one of these drives and what we potentially saw and what was good and what was bad, but Pitt took care of business. And really what I want to go over first is the good, okay? Number one, guys, the defense never rebuilds. It just reloads. And we saw this again yesterday. Pitt with 4 sacks, six tackles for loss. Again, daily pressure on the quarterback. Again, I understand it's Wofford, but again, you like to see these newer guys who took off really from, we saw the game in UCLA. They really had the depth from there last year. They got a little bit of time on the football field, but today you get to see those guys after seeing them really face each other for how many days and how many weeks. It was good to see another opponent. One, me personally, Dayon Hayes, a guy that everyone talks about. He's going to have a big year. Lit it up right away early on. I loved how you saw him. You saw Bengali Kamara come off the edge. Samuel Okunlola, he looked incredible. MJ Devonshire, Marquez Williams, I thought they looked incredible. Shane Simon, I thought he looked really good. You saw the depth on the interior. A guy like Sean Simmons, he didn't dress. He ended up not playing yesterday. I still think he's going to be very good, but you saw DeAndre Jones played really well. Devin Danielson. Just you see the depth overall from the defense in general. And it's really a reload. It's never rebuild anymore under the Narduzzi era, especially the past 4 or 5 years, especially with Charlie Partridge being there. Basically what we thought the defense was going to be, it was. Guys, to just give you some of these stats, man. I mean, Bryce Corsten, who we thought would start, ended up starting, was 12 of 17, only 127 yards passing, had 1 touchdown. Now, obviously, out of that 127 yards, 75 of that was on the last play where it was clearly offensive pass interference. There's a clear and blatant push. But the referees, when you think about it, it's 45-0. It's not going to break the game, in their eyes. But obviously, it stops the shutout for Pitt, which, obviously is a defensive guy like Pat Narduzzi. Pat Bostic talked about that after the game. And the first thing that came to mind from Pat Narduzzi was, hey, Pat, shut up. You wanted to have that shutout. Referees just really didn't care. It was 45-0. It was a clear, blatant offensive pass interference. I mean, he basically threw our cornerback. I mean, it is what it is. But again, it's still 45-7. But the majority of those yards, 75 of them, came on one play. So the pass defense was absolute lights out, and the depth and the amount of players that played on defense, which again shows the depth that Pitt's going to have on defense this year. You love to see it. You love to see the pressure. I don't think we're going to have a guy on the middle at all. That'll be a Kalijah Cansey. I think, again, Dayon Hayes is going to certainly break out this year. He's going to have a hell of a year. Same with Bengali Kamara. But it was cool to see, especially some of the conversations that we had personally after the game. There were some scouts that were there watching the game. I can tell you this. There were some scouts that are pretty high on Dayon Hayes. It's right now, Dayon, going into the season from scouts, they were saying he's a day 1 or day 2 pick. I think that'll continue to grow because he'll get more and more playing time, obviously, in terms of his production. I see that continuing to rise. That certainly won't be an issue going forward. That is certainly a fact. But another one of these things I wanted to point out too, and again, it starts here in the Narduzzi era. It's about stopping the run. And guys, overall, the team carried 19 times, -1 rushing yards, guys. I mean, that's lights out. You can't ask for anything more than that. I don't care if you're facing Power 5, you're facing Group of 5, or you're facing FCS. Those are still scholarship players out there. There are still good players out there, not to the level of the Power 5, or I guess now the Power 4 it is technically now with the Pac-12 falling apart. But a power team. Holding a team to -1 rushing yards, again, in the first game of the year where there's potentially mistakes everywhere. You never know what's going to happen, especially coming out of camp. That was incredible to see. So, from everything I heard from practice, the defense was still elite. Okay. And I think that they exactly proved that. They continued to show that. I thought the safeties did well. Overall, it was good to see. But now this coming week, we're going to see what this defense looks like against, Cincinnati, which, I'll preview them. I'll get somebody on the show. We'll talk about the pros and cons of both teams. Again, I look at this from a perspective of, it's Wofford. They took care of business. But Cincinnati, I can tell you this, they're going to struggle a little bit on offense because there's a lot of guys that left through the transfer portal, through graduation. Obviously, a new head coach there. Obviously, Luke Fickell is no longer the head coach there. Scott Satterfield, who came from Louisville, which again, guys, that was a very weird hire, and we'll go into that kind of stuff. But I am personally excited to see this Pitt defense against Cincinnati, who and now in the power leagues in the Big 12, which the Big 12 had a really, really bad weekend with the amount of upset losses that they had. Horrendous weekend for the Big 12. But I want to see what they do against Cincinnati. That is going to be a real test, and I think it's going to really show us what this defense can do with the lights on. You saw yesterday at Acrisure Stadium. You probably we didn't have the biggest crowd, that's for sure. I did like the overall attendance in terms of what it looked like, especially from sitting on the away side. I saw the home side, the upper deck and the lower deck looked good. It was a decent turnout. The student section was incredible. But next week when Cincinnati comes to town, you're certainly going to have a lot more people there. More of the lights come on. You're going to see this defense. What does it look like in terms of the talent almost coming together? I think Pitt has a better talent and better roster, but this is going to certainly be better. They're a Power 4 team, Big 12 team now. You got to take it what it is. It's not a bad team. It'll be fun to watch them. Now, obviously, too, I really did like Daniel Carter. One of the guys I wanted to talk about on offense before I started heading in another direction. Daniel Carter, it's like, God country, Daniel Carter scoring a touchdown in game 1. In my opinion, I think Rodney Hammond is still obviously your clear number 1. I think he's an absolute stud. The way he continues to play, the way he drives his feet, the way he finds holes. I mean, just the way he makes decisions quickly. He's clearly the number 1. But I would really like, again, within Sebo and Derek Davis, I really think Daniel Carter should be getting a lot more carries. He's a big back. He's been producing. He had a great camp, was healthy the entire time. Pat Narduzzi talked about that in the post-game show. I think this guy needs more carries. I think with Rodney Hammond being a smaller guy, you really want that 1-2 punch where you need another big guy. You need another big guy in there that can really make a difference in terms of what this running game could look like, because obviously I did like the running game overall in this game for Pitt. Rushing yards in general, Phil Jurkovec had 41 rushing yards, but you take that out, there are 177 yards rushing. I mean, they rushed for 177 yards without the quarterback being involved in this. Obviously Daniel Carter had 65 yards. Sebo Flemish had 27 yards. Rodney Hammond had 25 yards. But Rodney only had 5 carries, to make sure, he wasn't in there for a long time. You want him for the Cincinnati and the backyard brawl, obviously. And this, as the games and the season goes forward. Sebo had 9 carries. And then obviously Daniel Carter had 11 carries. He averaged 5.9 yards per carry. Guys, you can't ask for more than that. Your ground game, and the average between all of them, Daniel Carter, 5.9, Sebo Flemister, 3.5, Rodney Hammond, 5 yards. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. Even the freshman, Montravius Lloyd, 5 carries for 20 yards, obviously a 4-yard run average. That was really good to see. Derek Davis, 2 carries for 8 yards, average 4 yards a carry. They got depth. They got depth at the running back position. I think the offensive line did good, and we'll go into a little bit about that here. But in general, I like the defense and the depth on defense. You clearly saw it there. But it was overall good. I like the defensive side of the ball. I really liked how Daniel Carter played. I hope he gets more touches this season because I think he can be really good for Pitt. Now, I know in the title you see there, the good and the bad. I'm not going to put it as bad yet because it's only game number 1. I'm going to put it as wait and see. Number 1, Phil Jurkovec. The first 2 drives of the game, guys, were just not good. I think there was a lot of rust there. I think there was a lot of anxiety and nerves. He's coming back home. It was more of a scripted drive, really, the first 2 drives. And the first drive was really the worst because it just was out of sync. It didn't look good. The second drive, you saw things starting to really come together. And as the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th, and 7th drive really happened, you saw a completely different Phil Jurkovec in terms of being able to get, one more comfortable in the offense. The nerves were out of him already, and he was ready to go. So game 1, I mean, you want to see that. But, Phil did a lot of good things, but he did a lot of things that needed to be corrected. There were some, cross-body throws that I thought that can, potentially, the one really should have been intercepted. That could have potentially been a mistake. Also, too, there was a time where, he was, underthrew a couple guys, threw one really into the ground. Those were early on in the drives, obviously in the beginning of the first 2 or 3 drives. But he did a lot of good, too. One of the things, I was talking about on Twitter with a lot of people is, the spiral, he can't throw a spiral. Guys, I'm sorry, down the seam to Gavin Bartholomew was a hell of a throw. It was a great throw. I don't know where else you could have put that ball. The spiral was there. There are some fans that are certainly just don't like Phil because he went to Notre Dame, and that's okay. That's certainly your opinion. But you can totally talk about the bad things that he did, but also talk about the good things that, he still did a bunch of stuff that was really good. Overall, when you look at Phil's stats, I mean, hell, he was 17 of 23, 214 yards passing, 9.3 yards per average, and 1 touchdown passing, 1 touchdown throwing. I mean, no interceptions. So, I understand where people are coming from where, certainly there were a couple throws that were ducks that for sure. But, the one that Gavin Bartholomew, the throw to Carter Johnson, especially on the crossing route where he picked up 25 yards. The Bub Means throw over the middle where Bub Means picked up extra, I think it was 10 extra yards in terms of yards after the catch. Guys, I mean, it's game 1. There's going to be jitters and stuff like that. Certainly there will be a lot of corrections going forward for the offense, and I'm going to get into a little bit more, obviously, who's getting on the list here. But the flack that Jurkovec got in that game, I don't get it. I really don't. Did you guys watch Keaton Slovis play over BYU? They beat Sam Houston State 14-0. He threw for less than 80 yards passing. Did you want that guy back this year? There's a clear difference between Phil Jurkovec and Keaton Slovis. Besides the 1 sack that he took for 10 yards, where he didn't see the guy coming and he couldn't get away from him. You saw the mobility. He extended plays. The one throw he had to Rodney Hammond, I think Rodney should have caught that ball. That was right in his chest. I mean, is that Phil's fault too? So there's certainly flack for Phil in terms of some of the throws that he had, a couple ducks, and the ones that were low. It just didn't look good, especially the first 2 drives. There was some really bad throws involved there. That's understandable. But there were plenty of other good throws. I mean, you go back. I mean, I watched the tape. You go back and you see it out of the 23 throws that he had. I mean, 14 to 15 of them were really good. I mean, I don't know what else, what else they wanted. On top of it, he didn't even play the full game, really only played 2.5 quarters, was out really midway through the 3rd quarter. especially for what they were dealing with in terms of the vanilla offense. They weren't running anything. They weren't extending the field. They had no desire to push the ball down the field. He had one throw to Bob Means where he overthrew him. It was like 55 yards. I mean, it was a bomb. I mean, that was a really strong throw to say the least. But he missed a couple throws. There were a couple bad throws. It's the first game of the year. Okay, I think I'm saving my judgment in terms of what Phil Jurkovec could be this year for games 2 and 3. I think, you need to start really understanding that what does he really look like with Cincinnati and then potentially West Virginia down in Morgantown, and you get to the ACC schedule with, UNC. There's still so much more football, guys. I mean, when it comes to the preparation, they were facing Wofford. I think that, the hype of the team, I think the defense was really hyped up. The offense got out there. You're trying to let these guys gel. They're inserting guys, especially in the offensive line here and there. Guys, I really didn't have too much of a problem with what he did. It'd have been totally different if he was, 11 of 23 and he threw for 90 yards or 98 yards. Then, yeah, we need to be a little concerned. But he was 17 of 23 for 214 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 running and 1 passing. No interceptions. I mean, I understand that he needs to get better in some aspects, and there's certainly places where he can get corrected at. Okay. But let's be realistic. He was not that bad in what terms of some of these fans were saying. And it just, it's crazy to me. But also, too, the vanilla of the offense, Alabama did the same thing this week. Georgia did the same thing this week. Guys, I don't like. It's amazing to me sometimes. Obviously, we know what we're going to get against an FCS team. It's just how teams are in week 1 when they're facing lower opponents. And sometimes, especially when you're coaching, you want to see the main aspects of the offense, the basics of the offense, be run proficiently and basically become experts in your craft, especially when you're running your base offense. Okay, like running the football, your basics for your flat out basics, especially your passing concepts. You saw everything of the basics. I thought it all looked good in terms of the basics. Now, next week, when you start seeing Cincinnati and then West Virginia, you're going to see everything. Nothing's going to be hidden anymore. Everything's going to start coming out. You're going to see the passing game start to really open up. You'll start seeing 5 wide more. You'll start seeing the traditional 11 personnel that they're always in their basics, but then how they get out of it. You're going to start seeing 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. Malcolm Epps, I think he looked really good. Excuse me. I thought he looked really good. Carter Johnson looked really good. Gavin Bartholomew looked really good. They're using the tight ends. Tight ends accounted for 7 receptions in this game. Guys, I think there's just so much more to put out there. Just you got to say the judgment right now for what it looks like. For game 1, I was more than satisfied for what it looked like in game 1 because this could have been like 7 years ago, 6 years ago when we were with Youngstown State and we were going down to the wire. So that could be that much worse. Also, too, the offensive line and the run game. I'm wait and see. Obviously they shuffled so many guys in and out. You can't really see who got into a rhythm, who didn't. Obviously, Rodney was not in there very long because they don't want to worry about him getting an injury. Guys, again, that's a wait and see too. But again, they rushed for over 150 yards rushing with the running backs. I mean, for who they had, if you take out Phil Jurkovec and his rushing stats, over 150 yards rushing. So we'll wait and see what it looks like against a Power 4 team. But overall, I liked what I saw. You had a bunch of different guys get in there. You saw the first team offense and the second team offense be able to get out there. That was great. Also, too, the wide receivers. I cannot wait to see what the wide receivers continue to look like and develop. I thought Konate Mumfield made some plays yesterday. Bob Means made some plays yesterday. That was really good. Che Nwoku, again, I'm pronouncing his last name wrong. But he had a couple plays where he had the quick jet sweeps. Obviously, he's incredibly fast. That's probably going to be his specialty. You'd like to see him get more developed in terms of running patterns and being able to run his progressions in terms of his route running. But then, he didn't get a lot of options out there. They weren't really looking to push the ball down the field. So save it for that too. So the overall, the wide receivers, Zion, I thought he made a couple plays here and there. Christian came out there, especially in the middle of the third quarter. He was trying to get into a rhythm too. He's been sitting on the bench the entire day. He made some really bad throws. Clearly Christian, Vayer, Okay, he's got a hell of an arm. I mean, the guy certainly has the arm. I think he just needs to control it in terms of how close his receivers are to him, because he was throwing it so hard the guys couldn't even see what the hell was going on. The balls were flying everywhere. Balls were being dropped. But then he finally toned it down for the Jake McConaughey touchdown pass, but could have led him a little bit more there. Guys, there's just it's week one. There's just going to be so much back and forth. It's kind of just a wait and see for these ones. And also, too, just, Frank Cignetti. You saw the vanilla offense like a bunch of teams did this week. Alabama, Georgia, you saw them this week. Purdue tried going vanilla, and they did go vanilla, and they lost. So you could be like one of them, too. You could be going vanilla and then losing. But then, the fact that Pitt was able to go vanilla really show the basics of the offense and then be able to come out on top very handily. And it was never a question in doubt of whether Pitt was going to win. But you want to see the progression of what does Frank Cignetti take that next step? That now he has his quarterback. He's got really, in my opinion, 3 great quarterbacks in terms of, Phil Jurkovec, Christian Baylor, and then you have Nate Yarnell. I think Nate Yarnell is really good too. So, guys, week one, you really don't find out too much about what your football team looks like, especially when you're facing an FCS team. I truly believe that the corrections are going to look really good in terms of week 1 to week 2, because you now have something on tape to say, hey, in a live game, in practice, you look good here, but in a live game, you didn't do it well here. You missed a block. The communication was off. You were off here. You read your progressions wrong. There's a whole number of things you can go over and take a look at it and say, okay, hey, here's how things can be really corrected here. What can we do moving forward in terms of how do we get better? Now we're on to Cincinnati. Now let's open up the offense. We've perfected this part of the offense. Now let's really open it up and start really progressing and start really stretching the teams out, pushing the ball down the field, play action. It's all going to come to the fruition now. And I think that's kind of what we saw last year. If we had that competent quarterback play, we'd have had more wins last year instead of 8-4. I really think we could have been 9-3 or 10-2. So, guys, give me your thoughts. What did you think of the game? What did you think of the game yesterday? Obviously, I know I'll see the comments in the comment section about Phil Jurkovec. Guys, what is your outlook? What did you think of the game? Were you at the game? What do you think the projection is for Pitt so far this season from what you saw? What do you want to see? What did you think was good? What did you think was bad? Please comment down below your thoughts. Give me your thoughts. Share this video with your friends. Let's get their comments as well. Like the video and please subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Again, guys, so thankful for your guys' support. The channel would not be what it is without you guys. It continually grows at a rapid pace because of the fan base and the overall support. So again, I thank you guys so much for what you guys do for the channel. And as always and forever, hail to Pitt, hail to the ACC. I'll see you guys around. Let's get ready for week 2, Cincinnati. I'll see you then.